Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is going to look at the astrological influences that may indicate body dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder. I pulled up something from Wikipedia and I'm just going to read it verbatim. Body dysmorphic disorder, BDD, occasionally still called dysmorphophobia, is a mental disorder characterized by the obsessive idea that some aspect of one's own body or appearance is severely flawed and therefore warrants exceptional measures to hide or fix it. Okay, now the thing that I want to call attention to, first of all, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not pretending to be trained in this area. This is just a layperson who is interested in psychology and also an astrologer and wants to kind of tie the two together. I'm going to do one on anxiety at some point too, because I think that there are interesting observations you can make looking at the astrological chart. And I think that these can be helpful. These videos can be helpful just to kind of generate new ways of thinking about things, because we're always given these messages that they seem to be coming from very limited perspectives. And nobody should be afraid of ideas. Even if my ideas are triggering to people because they bring up uncomfortable feelings, though that can be very informative for you as an individual. Not what I'm saying is informative necessarily, but it can inform you in areas that you are unhealed or very sensitive about related to this topic. And understand that my perspective is merely one perspective, but we need multiple perspectives on these things in order to have healthy dialogues. There's way too much one-sided information and allowance of discussion in general that I have found in today's world. And I just think that it creates a lot of limited discourse. And that's, to me, that's not good. So the other thing that I want to bring up in this discussion, which may be super controversial, is the area of transgenderism, because this is a situation where somebody's born into one gender, but they don't identify with it and they outright reject it in a lot of cases. Now, I am certainly not an expert in this. I don't have any family members with this who are transgender individuals. I met my first transgender person in 1984 when I was attending college. So this is nothing new. And that person was actually undergoing hormonal treatment, I believe, at that point. And so this is something, I mean, so even like somebody undergoing hormonal treatment, that means that even back almost 40 years ago, they were doing these kinds of transitions. And maybe it goes back before the 80s. I don't know. I don't know the history of it. It really doesn't matter for the purposes of this discussion. Now, why am I including them? Okay, that segment of that population. Because if you are born into a body that you do not identify with, then there is, to me, that same theme that is happening here. Now, is that a mental illness? I would never characterize it as a mental illness. No, I wouldn't. I think it's more on this energetic level, to be honest with you. Teal Swan has a wonderful video on this issue that I saw years and years ago. I haven't watched one of her videos for a long time, but she had in her earlier days, she had a video on this. And what she said is that the person who is transgender has had many lifetimes in the opposite gender, and so they become attached to it, and then they resist their current gender because it's a change, and they really are strongly identified with that other gender. Now, is that offensive to anybody? Because we don't have to make these things sacred. We make your sexual orientation sacred, your race, your gender itself, or gender identification, all these things sacred. Why are they sacred? These are temporary designations. These are, the body is temporary. So to me, the excessive focus on these labels, it seems to me that it's done by design, because whoever might be trying to promote this doesn't want us to transcend body consciousness, 3D consciousness, apparently, from what I can see. So I'm looking at this at a higher level. I'm not looking at this as, I'm this, ultra-conservative person who thinks that this is like some kind of deviant, that this deviates from the norm and therefore there's something wrong with it. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. And I'm lumping in the same category as people who think that they are too fat when they're not, or they focus on a flaw, like they think their nose is too big. And so then see, this is the key to this. The person is putting all of their negative situations on that flaw or perceived flaw. And that could include like the color of one's skin. This is why my life sucks, because my skin is this color. And I'm not even getting into like skin bleaching or something like that. I mean, you could talk about that too. I mean, that might have some kind of energetic component to it. Okay. There has been such a thing called colorism that is connected to, slavery. It goes way back, and it was adopted by, the people themselves, and perpetuated to this day. Not just, all people of color. This is across the board. And, let's talk about, not very melanated people wanting to darken their skin, and excessive tanning. This is the nature of the human race. This is not limited to one group. This is what I'm trying to tell you. And the point is that people are placing inordinate emphasis on their physical appearance as to what is creating problems in their life. Okay, that is what I want to get at. And the interesting thing about this, going back to the transgender issue, is that there are people who have actually done gender reassignment surgery and have regretted it later. So this is a very important thing to take multiple opinions on, viewpoints, perspectives on, because it's a permanent decision in certain cases. And same with plastic surgery. People who get plastic surgery, you know, I have been planning to do this for a long time, but I was on the train last week and I saw this woman. I like to people watch, and I saw this woman and she was, she had very smooth skin, but she was probably older than me. I wouldn't be surprised if she was in her 60s. And I could tell she had a facelift. Not just Botox. I think she had like hardcore plastic surgery, you know what I mean? And when I saw the look on her face, it just was devastating to me because she looked like she was about to cry. She was sitting on that train and she looked so, so sad. And I always go into these stories of like what is going on in their life, but when you're trying to fix the inner through the outer, I just don't think it can be done. I don't think that you can, make yourself happy by doing so. Maybe if you are just like, there's an aesthetic thing and, you feel like, oh man, my face would look so good. If I only got rid of this little thing on my nose, my face would look epic. And there have been people who got like maybe minor nose jobs and their face totally was improved and they looked more beautiful. So I'm not saying that can't be done. We know bad nose jobs. We know bad plastic surgery. I've seen people with duck lips, women with duck lips, and I mean in public. I only ever saw them in the tabloids. And this was in a spiritual group, and these women had come to this spiritual group, and I felt like my heart really went out to them because I felt that they were really caught up in that, that shallow aspect in the matrix, that encourages women to do these things and, the reality shows and all of that stuff. And I'm really far out of that. I don't even wear makeup anymore. But I certainly spent years really being, all about the way that I looked. And I have Taurus rising. So let's talk about some of these things. Taurus and Libra rising, the rising sign, because it is the cusp of the first house of the body. And we say the self. But see, that's the thing in our society. People think the body is the self, which is so, so wrong. The body is not the self. Well, when I declare something, it's my opinion, but I'm not expecting you to agree with me, but that's how I feel. I feel that the body is not the self. So if you have Libra or Taurus rising, I feel that, your ruler is Venus, and that is going to make you physically attractive a lot of times. You're going to be physically attractive. So you may be excessively preoccupied with clothing and looking beautiful. But I think one of the main factors of this is if you feel insecure already, and this can come from other factors. Usually this is going to be a woman, but men can be very vain themselves. But women are conditioned to that beauty is an important attribute for them to have. Men can get away with, a lot of things physically that women can't necessarily get away with. And so just this societal expectations and conditioning. And if your mother was like that, and if you have the moon in, like my moon is in Virgo, and my mother told me something that I had never heard before. And she told me this a few years ago. And she said that there was a time when I was, going to lunch when I was young. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. I was going home for lunch. In those days, there were still a lot of mothers were home. So kids would go home for lunch, or they would stay. My mom was going to school, or, so she wasn't there. And so I was being taken, fed lunch by a lady in the neighbor, that was a mother of one of my classmates. And one day I said to this lady, I think I said something like, oh, I have to lose weight, or I can't eat that because I have to lose weight. And she told my mother. And my mother said that because she was saying that, my mother always wanted to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds. So I said that. And growing up, I was very skinny, and I never had an eating disorder either. That was just something I was parroting because my mother said that, okay? So you do get, if you are a young woman, you do get influenced by your mother in some way, at least at some point in your life. You can do that. If your moon, now my moon is in Virgo, so there can be more of that being self-critical. Oh, this is wrong. So that could come into it, and that could be an influence from the mother, or the mother is critical. But also, if you have a moon in Libra, a moon in Taurus, I think even Libra is the most vulnerable to this. And I think because Libra is an air sign associated with the intellect and ideas and the mind, or, you could say the intellect. And so they are mental constructs. Taurus is an earth sign, and earth can be very earthy and practical and accepting more. That's why we use the term down to earth, because the person's being very authentic, and they're connected to what is. So I feel that, and plus Taurus loves food. Libra is more about aesthetics. It's like that, but also mental constructs. And so if the moon in Libra decides that something is not right, they might feel that way. So that could be one factor. And having to look good. Also connected to that, and this could be the moon, I think this could be the sun, moon, or ascendant in either of these signs, relationships, love. Wanting to be loved. To me, this is ultimately what this is about, is feeling like if you don't look a certain way, you will be cheated on, you will not be loved. We talk about breast implants, another thing. Do women get breast implants solely for their own reasons because they want to? I'm sure that happens. But I think a lot of times it happens. Maybe they had a boyfriend who said that their breasts were too small, or, pressured them into getting implants. Maybe they had a father who teased them for that. I think, I did a video on Edie Sedgwick. Some of you may not know who she was. She was a socialite in the swinging 60s. And she was associated with Andy Warhol. And she died young. It was she had a tragic life, okay? And she got breast implants, and this was not, the type of breast implants in the 60s was a whole different animal. I don't know. They didn't have saline. I know she had silicone breasts. But the point is I think that her father teased her about having small breasts. And she, so these things, and she was tormented by her father. I think he sexually abused her. And she just had like a very messed up life. But these kinds of things do happen. So we have to acknowledge them and say, am I being influenced by this? Is this showing in my chart? And do I need to kind of play this out? Because, I don't look at the chart as something that we need to play out. We may need to like completely abandon that. I mean, this could be like ancestral karma in a sense, that people, in some cases we could say mental illness, runs in families. I don't really understand the concept of ancestral karma because they're even talking about the body and you inheriting certain conditions and things like that. And it's like, how can that be if we're like souls and the body is material? But I guess there's the consciousness programs the body, so how it's going to develop, form, what type of body it is and all of that. So it's kind of weird, it's kind of far out. I don't want to get too far into that. But so I would say, like, for people who are Libra people, especially who have like either sun, moon, or ascendant, or Taurus people, that they should be very aware of how physical appearance, the value that they are assigning it in life, and if they're being too superficial, like even, picking other partners based on being good looking and putting so much emphasis on that, that can lead you down the wrong road. So that's just one little thing to pay attention to, because same with plastic surgery, that can lead somebody down a rabbit hole. And that's why this is called a disorder, because the person is really putting so much emphasis on that. Now, I'm just looking back on Wikipedia. They say, I'm just reading verbatim, in body dysmorphic disorder's delusional variant, the flaw is imagined. Now, that would be somebody who is not overweight but thinks that they're obese. So we would talk about somebody with anorexia. Now, this begs a question. Are there any obese people? I was going to say women. Men can get anorexia too, manorexia, but it's usually a female disorder. Are there any people who are obese who actually develop anorexia? Because it seems to me like the person is not really overweight. They might have, I think people who gain their weight first in their face, that they tend to freak out because they feel like they're fat because they're looking at their face, but the rest of their body is, maybe it's skin thin and they have a fat face. I mean, it's not even fat. I don't like to use the word fat because that, that triggers people, but their face is full. Because really, I don't even mean fat. I mean, the face is full. And I think that's what happened to Karen Carpenter, that she had kind of a full face and some idiot told her that she, said she was chubby or something. And then she just like automatically went right into it. You know what I mean? But, Karen Carpenter came from a family, she had a controlling mother, and that seems to be a big factor in this. And they say, somebody who has anorexia, they're trying to control their life, and that's the only way that they can control their life. But I think that's a rather simplistic way. That might be like one of the motivations, but I do think that body dysmorphia kicks in at some point, whether they're born with it or whether they have it. And I think that they're born with the propensity for it. And that's why I'm talking about this astrology, because I think that goes along with it. And Karen Carpenter was a Pisces. And, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. People with a Pisces placements, they can have distorted thinking. Okay, even though Pisces can be highly intuitive, there still can be this distortion, and that's why Neptune, as the ruler, is associated with deception, distortion, dissolving. It's associated with mental illness. because mental illness itself is a distortion of the person is perceiving things about their life in a distorted way. They're either exaggerating the negative things, they're exaggerating their flaws and thinking that they're, they have all these flaws. And so the body, the mind complex, they're so interconnected that it's hard to, separate one from the other. Okay, wow. I just looked up Karen Carpenter's chart, and she had a conjunction. Oh, no, that's not. I thought it was a conjunction. I'll say this. If you have a conjunction between your sun and your ascendant, I think that, and it's in Pisces, I think that could possibly create issues with identity in terms of like how you perceive yourself physically, in particular. Okay. And so scratch that, but I do, she is a Pisces. And another thing about this is very interesting because this is not so much about body dysmorphia, but about maybe the ego or pride as it pertains to one's physical appearance. Chiron had the moon in Leo. And this is the moon, so it's more vulnerable and it's more prone to the shadow side as far as I'm concerned, which can be that feeling of not being seen, not, wanting attention, not being seen, but not being respected, needing respect, or, you could say hero worship or something, something grandiose like that, but I don't mean that. She didn't seem like that type of person at all. But the point being that her rising sign was 0 degrees of Cancer. So it was on the cusp with Gemini. And that's interesting too, because that can be very changeable. That means she was ruled by the moon, but very sensitive and very changeable. So that could involve moods, moodiness. And again, this idea of the person who is very I didn't say Cancer rising, but Cancer rising could be very hypersensitive and fearful of being ridiculed, fearful of being criticized, and feeling very exposed and vulnerable, and that being connected to the physical appearance. By the way, Cancer rising can produce a moon face. One of the aspects of Cancer rising can be a round face. Now, again, I mentioned that her face, that would be the first thing to retain water, let's say. And that's how somebody is. And, if you're ruled by the moon, you probably retain water. Things like that. I shouldn't laugh because, that was a very tragic thing that happened with Karen, such a distinctive singer, growing up, I never heard her songs. Wasn't that criminal? Because I grew up in the 70s, but especially the late 70s, when I started listening to the radio, late 70s, early 80s, when I was a teenager or preteen, and they didn't play her songs. So I only found out about her songs later. I knew of her, but I only found out about her songs later. So anyway, I think that if you have a prominent Cancer, you may also experience that ultra sensitivity, and that could lead to different things. The other thing that I want to mention too, having any aspect, even if it's like I said, the sun in conjunction with Neptune, or a sun in hard angle to Neptune. I don't know so much about the trine or the sextile, but I do think that the square in opposition to Neptune, that could be problematic too in terms of one's identity. Like, who am I? Now, is that the appearance? Well, that can be part of it, I think. you know, especially when a person is younger and they haven't, started a career, they haven't found out who they are at a deeper level, and they are just searching. That's why young people are so overly concerned about appearance, because they're just gaining awareness of themselves as individuals, and that's the first thing that comes along. They haven't, had accomplishments or whatever you want to say defines a person. So, another thing that I see too, or that can be, I think, is Chiron in the first. Oh, Neptune in the first house. Yeah, definitely. Neptune in the first, Chiron in the first. Because the person with Chiron, the person feels that pain of not feeling that their body is okay. They may have, and they were saying this in this definition of, the dysmorphia, is that in some cases, the body is, has a certain type of, what we'd call a defect or something that is, like a disfigurement. But there's another variant. It's called the delusional variant, and just read verbatim: the flaw is imagined. If the flaw is actual, its importance is severely exaggerated. Either way, thoughts about it are pervasive and intrusive and may occupy several hours a day, causing severe distress and impairing one's otherwise normal activities. And then they go into the mental health categories. Doesn't matter. That's not the point of this. It's just to kind of describe what could be going on. But the point is that the distortion, either the actual imagined, imperfection, or if the person does have some kind of disfigurement, or their nose is larger than normal, or something, they give it like undue importance. And this is where I say, I think that there's more of a spiritual thing going on here, because the person is looking for reasons why they're not happy, they're not accepted by others, and they're blaming an external thing for that. And, you think about somebody like Barbra Streisand. Now, she has had plastic surgery or some kind of work, but she never got a nose job. She might not have gotten a nose job. Maybe I might have read this, I'm not sure, but it might be because of, it could have affected her voice in some way. I don't know. They say nose, ear, and throat. Maybe that would affect her vocal cords. I don't know. But I just really admire things like that, because if you remember that woman from that movie, and Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey, she got a nose job. She had like a nose like Barbra Streisand. Very big nose. She was in that movie, which was a blockbuster. She got a nose job, and nobody recognized her because her nose was so distinctive and so much a part of her face. Now, she may have looked conventionally prettier. I can't even, I can barely picture how she looked afterwards. But the thing is, that's what made her her. And I guarantee you that somebody, well, I shouldn't say that, because how do I know this? But I believe that when somebody does that, especially after they've been in like a very popular movie and they've had experienced success, that I guess, in that particular case, they might feel like, I'm going to be typecast because I look a certain way. So that could be something. And so it might have been for professional reasons, where she didn't want to have such a distinctive feature. Okay, so I'm not going to just assume that. But for other people who do get surgery, they may think, this is going to put me over the top and then I'm going to be happy. And like I said, it doesn't always work out that way. There might be a small percentage of people who really are basically emotionally balanced, and they are approaching it. It's all about how you approach things. So they may approach things from a positive self-concept, and they just really they feel like they're going to achieve even more, and they're very positive in general in their life, and doesn't hurt their life in any way. But imagine if you try to do something that drastic and it doesn't solve the problem, because happiness is an inside job ultimately. So that's why I'm doing this video, because I want people to realize that there is, when you put your emphasis on the outer instead of the inner, there could be serious consequences, and it could lead to more of the same, because the person, till the person jumps off of that merry-go-round and they're willing to look at their problems, and they're willing to see that they're not nourishing their spiritual life, and they're too involved in the physical, they're going to probably continue getting the latest work done, trying to do more cosmetic, alterations, in other words. So another area is the sixth house. And this is specifically, I think, with eating disorders, because this is about Pluto in the sixth. The sixth can be your health, and it can be your diet. And Pluto can be obsession with it. And there's power associated with it, wanting to be in control. And also, another thing I could say, if this is like an obsessive compulsive disorder, I don't know if, to me it is. But whatever. The point is that from what I understand about OCD, it's like one of the reasons that it exists is to distract the person from their more serious problems. It's the mind's way of creating this surface level drama that you have to, be engaged in, so you don't have to, protects you from that more serious pain. And so the person has this goal, but the goal changes over time. First it's going to be this, and then it's going to be that. And of course that happens with plastic surgery as well. And getting back to the first house, and I think also Venus in conjunction with Chiron, or squaring, opposing, this can also involve love. I can't be loved. I can't be accepted if I look like this. And maybe the family of origin, with Chiron in the first, maybe the family of origin was very shaming or ridiculing of that person. And they didn't feel like who they were was good enough for their family of origin. And they just took that mentality out into the world. I'm wondering if Chiron in the 12th can produce this as well, because the 12th house is unconscious memories, maybe memories of a past life where the person was ridiculed for their physical appearance, for being obese, and then they came into this lifetime and they're not obese, but they still have that fear of fat, fear of that kind of thing. So I just wanted to really touch upon this, because I don't think I need to just try to, say a million different things. I don't want to make this an hour-long video. But it's just very interesting, because the more that we tune into our eternal nature that doesn't change when the body changes, to me, it's so important, because aging can lead to, this, I think, this anxiety as well. A beautiful woman who, she gets into her the last half of her 30s, her 40s. I mean, let me tell you, when I say that I went through this, and it really wasn't I really wasn't a shallow person. I really wasn't a shallow person, but I was insecure. And so I really used my physical appearance to feel good about myself. And when I got to be a certain age, they call that hitting the wall. You know what I mean? But, I think I heard Howard Stern say something like that once. And really, what that basically means, it doesn't mean that the person just is like totally unattractive, but it means that they just get to a stage where their looks aren't, if they're really attractive, they're not necessarily being noticed as much. And it's because they're kind of, the bloom is off the rose, let's put it that way. And once that happened for me, where I wasn't always getting, men, in a car, like swiveling their heads and looking back, there was a pain that, and this was around the age of 40 especially, that came over me that was serious, a sadness. And that was a great spiritual purging lesson. I had no idea how much that mattered to me until it didn't happen. And now I can tell you, years later, that I love I love not wearing makeup. I love wearing whatever, whenever. And I love not needing that. I love not needing that because you know what happened is it helped me to develop real talents. And I think to myself, why did I believe that this was my worth in life? Somewhere I got that message. I don't know where. I'm not going to blame my parents because I was not, I didn't feel like I was, this more well, you know what? I think it's karmic. I do think it's karmic, to be honest with you. Because when I was like in preschool, I came home one day to my mother and I said to her, I'm the prettiest girl in nursery school. So you can tell that I had some ego with that. And that probably came from another lifetime because I can tell you, I don't think that I was told that by people. Maybe, people say that, adults say that to children, but not excessively. That was not my image growing up, was being the beautiful girl. So when I was, cultivating this as a teenager, and also getting teased earlier for things, having glasses or not glasses, having, something, just different things. Becoming beautiful was something that I felt was an important thing. And it was something I held on way too long. But I never really felt that at a deep level. I never really needed that at a deep level. And now I feel a sense of liberation, and I want to encourage like younger women especially to not invest so much in the surface, to really, develop your talents that you came here to shine in the world. There's nothing wrong with being beautiful, by the way. And there's nothing wrong with loving beautiful clothing and things like that. I think that makes the world a nicer place, that there are beautiful, everything, beautiful people, but have a beautiful soul, be a good person on the inside. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm sure there's so much more I could cover, but I'm just talking off the top of my head as I've been wanting to do lately. And I hope that this has been insightful or just stimulating to some of you, if you have stuck around for this whole thing, all 44 minutes. Let me end at 44:44. If you want a private reading, check the link below. Thank you. Bye.